Top 10 Supreme Buddhist Mantras Everyone Should Know for Enlightenment. Top 10 Supreme Buddhist Mantras. Buddhism is becoming increasingly popular in our spiritual lives through various forms of practice. Among them, practicing at home is chosen by many Buddhists to seek peace and diligence on the path of learning Buddhism. Mantras or sacred chants are one of the supreme methods of Buddhist practice. Mantras bring us calmness, serenity, balance, and comfort in times of difficulty. When chanting mantras, we should maintain a positive, joyful, and dedicated mindset. Dedicate the merit of chanting to all sentient beings, wishing them enlightenment and peace as an act of great compassion. Over 2,500 years ago, when Shakyamuni Buddha was born, the language used in India was Sanskrit. Therefore, most of the mantras we chant are in Sanskrit, with a few in Tibetan. The Shurangama Sutra mentions the power of Vajrayana mantras, stating that these secret mantras are known only between Buddhas. Saints cannot fully understand these mantras. By chanting them, one can eliminate sins and quickly attain the state of saintly virtues. The primary function of mantras is to integrate the mystical aspects of Vajrayana Buddhism into human nature, helping us eliminate suffering, diseases, and evil spirits. However, the essential spirit of chanting mantras is to cultivate the mind towards goodness. While chanting, one should focus the mind but remain relaxed. The mantras and their benefits. These mantras have many miraculous functions, such as repenting for sins and resolving karmic debts. Chanting these mantras daily can bring longevity and heal illnesses for oneself or others. Additionally, these mantras can be used to offer water and food to animals and hungry ghosts in the 6 realms of reincarnation, helping them be reborn in a better realm. Practitioners also use these mantras to resolve past life grievances, break evil influences, and dispel the curses and spells of harmful spirits. Those wishing to help spirits trapped in hell, animal realms, or hungry ghosts can chant these mantras for their liberation. The 6-syllable mantra is a powerful and profound mantra taught by Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva to help sentient beings practice according to his vows. Om Mani Padme Hum is the supreme mantra in Buddhism. The mantra of Chittagarbha Bodhisattva in Sanskrit is Om Haha Vinyaya. Chittagarbha's great vow is that he will not attain Buddhahood until all hells are empty and all beings are saved and attain enlightenment. Because of this vast vow, Chittagarbha Bodhisattva is entrusted by the Buddha to save sentient beings in the heavens and the 6 realms of existence. The benefits of chanting Chittagarbha's mantra are immense. It helps practitioners resolve karmic obstacles accumulated over many lifetimes, leading to peace and diligence in practice. By resolving karmic debts, our spiritual life becomes more fortunate and smooth. This mantra is also highly beneficial for the spirits of our ancestors and relatives. It brings immense merit to oneself and helps liberate the souls in hell, allowing them to be reborn quickly. Pregnant women who chant this mantra receive protection for themselves and their unborn child, resolving past grievances and dedicating merit to the child. The Medicine Buddha's mantra in Sanskrit is Tadyatha Om Bhikanze Bhikanze Maha Bhikanze Radza Samungate Soha. This mantra means eliminating pain and suffering, including the pain of death and rebirth caused by karmic debts. Mahabhika means removing all pain, addressing the suffering originating from the mind. Thus, the Medicine Buddha's mantra has profound healing powers, helping beings escape suffering from illness, old age, and death, and cleansing inner mental afflictions. Tibetan monks use this mantra to heal illnesses, and regular practice allows one to heal others. Worldwide, millions chant or invoke the Medicine Buddha's name, and it is said that hearing this mantra ensures rebirth in a good realm regardless of past karma. The Medicine Buddha is well known in Buddhism for his miraculous healing powers. The Heart Sutra mantra in Sanskrit is Anale Visakha Bidibanta Mahe Sala Saha. The Shurangama mantra is the most powerful in Buddhism. In the Shurangama Sutra, the Buddha taught Ananda that if someone has heavy karmic obstacles, they should sincerely chant the Shurangama mantra to eliminate these obstacles. This mantra is mentioned in many of the Buddha's teachings for its ability to subdue demons, eradicate external chaos, and achieve Buddhahood. All Buddhas use this mantra to save beings from disasters like floods and fires, and to liberate beings in hell, hungry ghosts, and animals. Chanting the Shurangama mantra prevents demonic attacks, thus it is considered the Buddha's crown jewel. As long as the Shurangama mantra is chanted, the Dharma will continue to flourish. Vajrayana Buddhism believes that demons fear this mantra wherever it is heard. The mantra of the Buddhist wealth deity in Sanskrit is Om Dambala Zalende Soha. People often pray for a prosperous life, and Dambala is considered the Buddha who brings wealth and riches. Known as the Yellow Jambala, he represents all wealth deities. Practicing under his guidance brings immense merit and benefits, ensuring blessings and prosperity. Chanting the Yellow Jambala's mantra can grant financial success, blessings, wisdom, and longevity. The mantra is likened to a wish-fulfilling gem, fulfilling the requests of beings. In Tibet, China, and India, people devoutly worship Jambala statues and mantras. In Buddhism, Yellow Jambala is seen as a protector deity, helping beings escape suffering and find joy to practice the Dharma. The Heart Sutra mantra in Sanskrit is Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvaha. This mantra, like the Prajna Paramita, is a vehicle for swiftly reaching enlightenment and understanding the profound truths of the Dharma. The Buddha taught that the Prajna Paramita is the great mantra, the great wisdom mantra, the supreme mantra, the unequaled mantra, able to remove all suffering, true and unfailing. All Buddhas attain Buddhahood through Prajna Paramita. Therefore, this mantra is personified and revered as the mother of all Buddhas. The Heart Sutra mantra has significant power and effect in the path to enlightenment, essential in Buddhist practice rituals. The Buddha wanted his disciples to understand that the path to enlightenment involves overcoming many obstacles, and chanting the Prajna Paramita helps them stay focused, overcome difficulties, and reach enlightenment. Additionally, this mantra aids in repenting past evil deeds and dedicating merit to holy beings, protectors, and all sentient beings in all realms. Prajna Paramita is the great mantra of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to save beings. The mantra of Kundi Bodhisattva in Sanskrit is Om Chuli Chuli Junli Soha. Kundi, known as the 700 million Buddha Mother, is a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, appearing in the 6 realms to save beings. She vows to protect the Dharma and aid beings with limited wisdom, deep karmic obstacles, illnesses, and short lifespans. The power of Kundi's mantra is inconceivable. The scriptures state that 700 million past Buddhas attained enlightenment through chanting this mantra. Nagarjuna, one of the 4 great bodhisattvas who promoted Mahayana, chanted this mantra diligently. Chanting this mantra 900,000 times can eliminate the 10 evil deeds, the 5 heinous crimes, dispel calamities and illnesses, and increase blessings and longevity. The Buddha also taught that chanting this mantra ensures one encounters Buddhas and Bodhisattvas wherever they are born, leading a fulfilling life, often becoming monks, and receiving the Bodhisattva precepts, free from evil realms and always protected by heavenly beings. The Kundi mantra is one of the mantras taught by the Buddha for practice, helping eliminate calamities, karmic obstacles, and gaining heavenly support. The Pure Land Rebirth mantra in Sanskrit is Namo Amitabhaya Tathagataya Tadyatha Om Amrita Sambhava Amrita Siddham Bhavatu Me, Bhavatu Samaya Shuddha Siddham Bhavatu Me. Why do beings continuously reincarnate in the 3 realms and 6 paths? It is due to heavy karmic obstacles and mental afflictions of greed, hatred, and ignorance. Therefore, the Pure Land Rebirth mantra is a mantra for practitioners to be reborn in the Western Pure Land, freeing themselves from suffering. In the 7th chapter of the Sutra on the Perfection of the Mindfulness of the Buddha, Bodhisattva Samantabhadra mentions that out of compassion for beings in the degenerate age, the Buddha taught the Pure Land Rebirth mantra to assist the consciousness of the deceased in being reborn in the Pure Land. This mantra eliminates severe sins like the 4 heavy sins, the 5 heinous crimes, the 10 evil deeds, and slandering the right Dharma. Those who practice this mantra sincerely will have Amitabha Buddha always reside at their crown, supporting them day and night, preventing enemies from harassing them. In this life, they will be safe and at peace, and at death, they will be reborn in the Pure Land. Thus, many Buddhists today practice the Pure Land method, aspiring to be reborn in the Pure Land. Amitabha Buddha guides beings to the Western Pure Land, and this mantra is especially beneficial for those nearing death. The mantra of Manjushri Bodhisattva in Sanskrit is Om Arapa Kenadi. Human suffering is due to ignorance and lack of wisdom. To help Buddhists progress in their studies, wisdom is needed to find the path to liberation as taught by the Buddha. Manjushri Bodhisattva, also a great disciple of Shakyamuni Buddha, often appears on the left side of the Buddhist throne. Together with Shakyamuni Buddha and Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, they are called the three saints of the Avatamsaka. Manjushri is the foremost in wisdom and eloquence among all bodhisattvas. He is the supreme master of the Buddhas of the three times, possessing various skillful means, and can help beings attain intelligence and wisdom, entering the ocean of wisdom. As the Bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri's mantra is the sacred chant of perfect wisdom. It is a vital factor in overcoming ignorance, helping us see the world clearly and truthfully. The benefits of chanting Manjushri's mantra are immense, strengthening the mind, increasing understanding, and opening wisdom. Consequently, each Buddhist gains clear wisdom, enhancing debating, writing, and memory, and increasing blessings. Manjushri Bodhisattva symbolizes infinite wisdom, and his mantra brings great wisdom energy. The great compassion mantra of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is derived from the thousand-armed and thousand-eyed Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Sutra. It was taught by Shakyamuni Buddha in a Dharma assembly attended by many bodhisattvas, heavenly beings, saints, dragons, and great monks like Mahakashyapa and Ananda on Mount Gridhakuta. An island in the southern part of India is considered a place where Avalokiteshvara often resides. In this Dharma assembly, Avalokiteshvara, out of great compassion for all beings, taught this mantra. The power of this mantra is immense. Anyone who chants it will be protected by Avalokiteshvara, saving them from the three evil paths and ensuring rebirth in a good realm. Another function of the great compassion mantra is to alleviate suffering. When we face disasters, grief, despair, and hopelessness, we should have firm faith in Avalokiteshvara, wholeheartedly chanting the great compassion mantra, and surely he will provide skillful means to help us overcome suffering and find happiness. Anyone who chants the great compassion mantra with all their heart will surely achieve all their wishes and desires, as the power of the mantra is boundless and unstoppable. The great compassion mantra is a powerful means of alleviating the suffering of beings. Its boundless power cannot be hindered. Buddhism has 84,000 Dharma gates, and although each sect may have different practices, they all guide people towards enlightenment and liberation. Depending on each person's karma, they choose different methods of practice. Therefore, no matter which method we choose, the core remains the path to our own enlightenment. Hello everyone. Welcome to Mind Podcast Buddhism, the best channel for sharing knowledge about Buddhism. Today we will talk about the topic, the path to Nibbana. Join us as we delve into the teachings and practices that guide us towards enlightenment and ultimate liberation. Nibbana, this process of birth and death continues ad infinitum until this flux is transmuted, so to say, to Nibbana Dhatu, the ultimate goal of Buddhists. The Pali word Nibbana is formed of Ni and Vana. Ni is a negative particle and Vana means lusting or craving. It is called Nibbana in that it is a departure from the craving which is called Vana, lusting. Literally, Nibbana means non-attachment. It may also be defined as the extinction of lust, hatred, and ignorance. The whole world is in flames, says the Buddha. By what fire is it kindled? By the fire of lust, hatred, and ignorance. By the fire of birth, old age, death, pain, lamentation, sorrow, grief, and despair it is kindled. It should not be understood that Nibbana is a state of nothingness or annihilation owing to the fact that we cannot perceive it with our worldly knowledge. One cannot say that there exists no light just because the blind man does not see it. In that well-known story too, the fish arguing with his friend, the turtle, triumphantly concluded that there exists no land. Nibbana of the Buddhists is neither a mere nothingness nor a state of annihilation, but what it is no words can adequately express. Nibbana is a Dhamma which is unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, and unformed. Hence it is eternal, duva, desirable, subha, and happy, sukha. In Nibbana nothing is eternalized, nor is anything annihilated, besides suffering. According to the books, references are made to Nibbana as Sopadasesa and Anapadasesa. These in fact are not two kinds of Nibbana, but the one single Nibbana, receiving its name according to the way it is experienced before and after death. Nibbana is not situated in any place, nor is it a sort of heaven where a transcendental ego resides. It is a state which is dependent upon this body itself. It is an attainment, Dhamma, which is within the reach of all. Nibbana is a supramundane state attainable even in this present life. Buddhism does not state that this ultimate goal could be reached only in a life beyond. Here lies the chief difference between the Buddhist conception of Nibbana and the non-Buddhist conception of an eternal heaven attainable only after death or a union with a god or divine essence in an afterlife. When Nibbana is realized in this life with the body remaining, it is called Sopadasesa Nibbana Dhatu. When an Arahat attains Parinibbana, after the dissolution of his body, without any remainder of physical existence, it is called Anupadasesa Nibbana Dhatu. In the words of Sir Edwin Arnold, if any teach nirvana is to cease, say unto such they lie. If any teach nirvana is to live, say unto such they err. From a metaphysical standpoint, nibbana is deliverance from suffering. From a psychological standpoint, nibbana is the eradication of egoism. From an ethical standpoint, nibbana is the destruction of lust, hatred, and ignorance. Does the Arahat exist or not after death? The Buddha replies, the Arahat who has been released from the five aggregates is deep, immeasurable like the mighty ocean. To say that he is reborn would not fit the case. To say that he is neither reborn nor not reborn would not fit the case. One cannot say that an Arahat is reborn as all passions that condition rebirth are eradicated, nor can one say that the Arahat is annihilated, for there is nothing to annihilate. Robert Oppenheimer, a scientist, writes, if we ask, for instance, whether the position of the electron remains the same, we must say no. If we ask whether the electron's position changes with time, we must say no. If we ask whether the electron is at rest, we must say no. If we ask whether it is in motion, we must say no. The Buddha has given such answers when interrogated as to the conditions of man's self after death. But they are not familiar answers from the tradition of the 17th and 18th century science. The path to Nibbana. How is Nibbana to be attained? It is by following the Noble Eightfold Path, which consists of right understanding, samadhithi, right thoughts, samasankappa, right speech, samavaka, right actions, samakamanta, right livelihood, samajiva, right effort, samavayama, right mindfulness, samasati, and right concentration, samasamadhi. This unique path constitutes morality, sila, concentration, samadhi, and wisdom, panna. The Buddha summarizes his middle way in the following beautiful little verse: to refrain from all evil, to do what is good, to cleanse one's mind. This is the advice of all Buddhas. Morality, sila, is the first stage on this path to Nibbana. Without killing or causing injury to any living creature, he should be kind and compassionate towards all, even to the tiniest creature that crawls at his feet. Refraining from stealing, he should be upright and honest in all his dealings. Abstaining from sexual misconduct, which debases the exalted nature of man, he should be pure. Shunning false speech, he should be truthful. Avoiding pernicious drinks that promote heedlessness, he should be sober and diligent. These elementary principles of regulated behavior are essential to one who treads the path to Nibbana. Violation of them means the introduction of obstacles on the path which will obstruct his moral progress. Observance of them means steady and smooth progress along the path. The spiritual pilgrim, disciplining thus his words and deeds, may advance a step further and try to control his senses. While he progresses slowly and steadily with regulated word and deed and restrained senses, the karmic force of this striving aspirant may compel him to renounce worldly pleasures and adopt the ascetic life. To him then comes the idea that a den of strife is household life and filled with toil and need, but free and high as the open sky is the life the homeless lead. It should not be understood that everyone is expected to lead the life of a bhikkhu or a celibate life to achieve one's goal. One's spiritual progress is expedited by being a bhikkhu, although as a lay follower one can become an arahat. After attaining the third stage of sainthood, one leads a life of celibacy. Securing a firm footing on the ground of morality, the progressing pilgrim then embarks upon the higher practice of samadhi, the control and culture of the mind, the second stage on this path. Samadhi is the one-pointedness of the mind. It is the concentration of the mind on one object to the entire exclusion of all irrelevant matter. There are different subjects for meditation according to the temperaments of the individuals. Concentration on respiration is the easiest to gain the one-pointedness of the mind. Meditation on loving kindness is very beneficial as it is conducive to mental peace and happiness. Cultivation of the four sublime states, loving kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha, is highly commendable. After giving careful consideration to the subject for contemplation, he should choose the one most suited to his temperament. This being satisfactorily settled, he makes a persistent effort to focus his mind until he becomes so wholly absorbed and interested in it that all other thoughts get ipso facto excluded from the mind. The 5 hindrances to progress, namely sense desire, hatred, sloth and torpor, restlessness and brooding and doubts, are then temporarily inhibited. Eventually he gains ecstatic concentration and, to his indescribable joy, becomes enwrapped in jhana, enjoying the calmness and serenity of a one-pointed mind. When one gains this perfect one-pointedness of the mind, it is possible for one to develop the 5 supernormal powers, abhina, divine eye, dibakaku, divine ear, dibasodar, reminiscence of past births, pabaniva sanusati nana, thought reading, parasita vijnana, and different psychic powers, idavida. It must not be understood that those supernormal powers are essential for sainthood. Though the mind is now purified, there still lies dormant in him the tendency to give vent to his passions, for by concentration, passions are lulled to sleep temporarily. They may rise to the surface at unexpected moments. Both discipline and concentration are helpful to clear the path of its obstacles, but it is insight, vipassana alone, which enables one to see things as they truly are, and consequently reach the ultimate goal by completely annihilating the passions inhibited by samadhi. This is the third and the final stage on the path to nibbana. With his one-pointed mind, which now resembles a polished mirror, he looks at the world to get a correct view of life. Wherever he turns his eyes, he sees naught but the 3 characteristics: anicca, transiency, dukkha, sorrow, and anatta, soullessness, standing out in bold relief. He comprehends that life is constantly changing and all conditioned things are transient. Neither in heaven nor on earth does he find any genuine happiness, for every form of pleasure is a prelude to pain. What is transient is therefore painful, and where change and sorrow prevail, there cannot be a permanent, immortal soul. Whereupon, of these 3 characteristics, he chooses on that appeals to him most, and intently keeps on developing insight in that particular direction, until that glorious day comes to him when he would realize nibbana for the first time in his life, having destroyed the 3 fetters: self-illusion, sakkaya ditthi, doubts, vichikicha, indulgence in wrongful rites and ceremonies, silabhata paramasa. At this stage he is called a sotapanna, stream winner, one who has entered the stream that leads to nibbana. As he has not eradicated all fetters, he is reborn 7 times at the most. Summoning up fresh courage, as a result of this glimpse of nibbana, the Aryan pilgrim makes rapid progress in cultivation deeper. Insight becomes a sakadagami, once returner, by weakening 2 more fetter, namely sense desire, kamaraga, and ill will, padaga. He is called sakadagami because he is reborn on earth only once in case he does not attain arahatship. It is in the 3rd stage of sainthood, anagami, never returner, that he completely discards the aforesaid 2 fetters. Thereafter, he neither returns to this world nor does he seek birth in the celestial realms, since he has no more desire for sensual pleasures. After death he is reborn in the pure abodes, Sudavasa, a congenial Brahma plane, till he attains arahatship. Now the saintly pilgrim, encouraged by the unprecedented success of his endeavors, makes his final advance in destroying the remaining fetters, namely, lust after life in realms of forms, ruparaga, and formless realms, aruparaga, conceit, mana, restlessness, udaka, and ignorance, avijja, becomes a perfect saint, an arahat, a worthy one. Instantly he realizes that what was to be accomplished has been done, that a heavy burden of sorrow has been relinquished, that all forms of attachment have been totally annihilated, and that the path to nibbana has been trodden. The worthy one now stands on heights more than celestial, far removed from the rebellious passions and defilements of the world, realizing the unutterable bliss of nibbana, and like many an arahat of old, uttering that paean of joy. Goodwill and wisdom, mind by method trained, the highest conduct on good morals based, this maketh mortals pure, not rank or wealth. As T.H. Huxley states, Buddhism is a system which knows no God in the Western sense, which denies a soul to man, which counts the belief in immortality a blunder, which refuses any efficacy to prayer and sacrifice, which bids men look to nothing but their own efforts for salvation, which in its original purity knew nothing of vows of obedience and never sought the aid of the secular arm, yet spread over a considerable moiety of the world with marvelous rapidity, and is still the dominant creed of a large fraction of mankind. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who might benefit from it. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments section below, hit the like button, follow, and turn on the notification bell. This is how you can show your support for me. Once again, thank you very much, and see you in the next videos. Who am I? Where did I come from? And what is my life about? Astounded by the Buddha's answer. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Have you ever wondered, who am I? Where did I come from? Where will I go? Why? And what is the purpose of my existence? These are undoubtedly profound questions that concern not only you, but all of humanity. Who am I? This poignant question must have been raised since the dawn of time, when humans first became aware of their existence in this life. In the course of each of our lives, it seems to arise at some early point that we hardly remember, only to persistently follow us until the very end. Who am I to come and go in this life without knowing the cause and purpose? Who am I to emerge from nothingness as a being full of desires? Who am I to ultimately leave this life as an inevitability, even while still deeply cherishing it? Why was I born? Why must I die? Why and why? If we cannot answer such questions, we will never truly understand the significance of our existence in this life. Nor can we grasp the meaning of our actions, whether they aim for a noble life or are merely a struggle for a better one. However, there are different ways to answer a question. For instance, an answer can provide the content that the questioner wants to know. Those who try to answer in this way often construct an image of a creator, such as believing that humans were created by a god, born from the divine power of that god. If we accept this, it means we have found the answer to the above questions. And if we have further related questions, perhaps we will have to wait until we meet this god. But it seems that the civilization of humanity in the 21st century no longer accepts such imaginative answers. We need a more rational way of understanding so as not to feel that we are living a meaningless life, merely waiting for the end without understanding the reason or knowing where we will go. Thus, the effort to answer by providing the content the questioner seeks has failed. Another way to respond is to analyze the very content of the question. If the questioner can recognize the irrationality in the question, they will no longer desire an answer, and in that sense, they can be considered satisfied. The Buddha chose this method by analyzing the meaning of the word self in the question and pointing out that there is no such self that truly exists. When there is no self, the question, who am I, becomes irrational, simply because it is impossible to provide any image or concept to describe something that does not exist. Therefore, one cannot be anyone when the self does not exist. A series of related questions can be considered simultaneously answered. We need not worry about the coming and going of a self that does not exist. Instead, the more pertinent questions now shift to another realm. How can such a non-existent self appear to exist so vividly in our consciousness? And how can a world full of such non-existent selves operate according to very real principles, creating the complex interdependent karmic conditions for all beings in this realm? Answering these questions becomes a process of active cultivation, a contemplation that delves into the very origins of all phenomena and the causes and conditions that govern them. In the scriptures, the Buddha often explained that the self of each being is a collection of aggregates, specifically composed of 5 aggregates, each of which is itself a collection of various factors. These 5 aggregates are form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. In this analysis, form refers to the aggregation of sounds, colors, smells, tastes, and the senses like eyes, ears, nose, and tongue. Each element is necessary to form what is called the form aggregate. The form aggregate also includes the senses themselves, like eyes, ears, nose, and tongue, as well as their objects, because all are composed of matter. These are what we can observe. Sensation refers to the feelings that arise when our body comes into contact with external objects, such as pleasure, pain, or indifference. Perception refers to the recognition and differentiation of objects after contact, such as distinguishing whether something is long or short, large or small, blue, yellow, white, or red, and even determining whether something is good or bad, right or wrong. The mechanism operates by searching in memory for past images related to the object, thereby identifying and distinguishing it. Mental formations encompass all mental activities or responses of the mind after contact and perception, such as liking, disliking, praising, or criticizing. The mental formation aggregate is complex as it covers a wide range of activities and can serve as a cause for other physical and mental activities, while other aggregates like form, sensation, and perception are merely existing phenomena that do not create causes. Thus, mental formations have two distinct roles. They act as an effect when the mind's reactions result from other conditions and factors. They also act as a cause when the mind's reactions become conditions leading to actions of the body, speech, and mind. In this sense, the activities of the body, speech, and mind are expressions of the mental formation aggregate and the result of its influence. The final aggregate is consciousness, which refers to the function of awareness manifested in all senses, such as eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and even mind consciousness. Such detailed analysis provides us with a true understanding of the so-called self that exists in this life. Each element analyzed here manifests very tangibly in our ordinary perception. Still, it reveals its fragile, compounded nature due to dependent origination when examined under the light of prajna wisdom. Through this, we can see that the results of cultivating insight into emptiness also help us recognize the compounded nature of a self that we have long regarded as a single, solid, and enduring entity. Buddhism calls this correct understanding the insight of non-self, meaning there is no enduring, independent self in the reality we perceive. Recognizing the fragile, compounded, and non-real nature of the self formed from the five aggregates does not mean denying its existence in this phenomenal world. On the contrary, this correct understanding helps the self become better and more meaningful during its existence, instead of being driven and urged by desires to nourish, maintain, and protect a non-real self, causing endless harm to oneself and others. We can examine the issue more clearly and understand what should be done to bring true happiness in this life by recognizing that this compounded self exists in a relative world, functioning according to the principles of dependent origination and causality, where all our emotions and thoughts continuously arise and cease in this flow. Thus, we objectively understand that our actions, speech, or thoughts determine whether that self exists in peace and happiness or is submerged in suffering and distress. In other words, we have the choice to decide how our existence unfolds in the phenomenal world without accepting it as the decree of any mystical, supernatural, or predetermined force. It is all up to us. Causality is a complex equation with many factors contributing to the outcome. The most decisive factors are always our awareness and thoughts. As the Dhammapada teaches, mind precedes all phenomena. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-made. If with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox. Mind precedes all phenomena. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-made. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows him like his never-departing shadow. These verses offer simple, understandable yet profound teachings that can serve as a guiding principle throughout our lives. With the right belief and understanding of the principle stated in the verse, we will no longer be confused by life's storms and will clearly discern what actions to take or avoid, depending on whether we seek happiness or suffering. By abandoning the mistaken belief in a fixed, separate self, existing independently of external objects, we can escape the bonds of desires centered around a non-real self. we will realize that we do not truly need to protect or build up the self to attain happiness as we once thought. Even when we try everything to satisfy the demands of that self, we still cannot achieve happiness, because true happiness only comes when we speak and act with a pure and kind mind. Here are some questions that might arise. Can I strive to act with a pure mind without changing my perception of the self? To me, it is a very real entity, entirely distinct from all other entities and objects. Without the self, what foundation would I have for my practice? And without the self, even if I achieve happiness, who would experience it? These questions seem reasonable and are likely common among most people, as they stem from the deep-rooted assumption of a self that has long been accepted as a given. The truth is, without the Buddha's detailed and clear guidance, we would find it challenging to reflect deeply enough to recognize the compounded and temporary nature of the self. Furthermore, even after contemplating the non-real nature of the self, completely letting go of attachment to it remains a long and difficult process, requiring perseverance and wisdom to gradually succeed. Buddhist terminology refers to the clinging attachment to the non-real, compounded self as self-attachment, and the practice is a process of eliminating this attachment to achieve the correct understanding known as non-self. By seeing through the temporary and fragile nature of this compounded body and mind, we can let go of all attachments to it. To answer the first question, can we cultivate a pure mind without letting go of the self? Or, to put it differently, does accepting the self as a solidly existing entity pose any obstacles to acting with a pure mind? This is a practical question, but it has already been answered in our real-life experiences. Answering this question also resolves the doubts in the other questions. In reality, if we could find true happiness simply by acting with a pure and kind mind without letting go of self-attachment, then the practice of non-self would be unnecessary. But that is not the case. Self-attachment will pollute our mind from the moment any thought arises, even a wholesome one. For example, when you feel the urge to give and help others, self-attachment will simultaneously generate obstructive thoughts by comparing yourself with the recipient, making you feel a sense of loss when you give away what is yours. And when you do give, you might hope for some future reward for this self, because you performed a virtuous act. These subtle thoughts arise naturally based on self-attachment, and we rarely pay attention to them. As a result, our good deeds are challenging to initiate, and even if we manage to carry them out, their positive impact will be significantly reduced. The Diamond Sutra refers to this as attachment to form while giving. We make clear distinctions between the giver, the receiver, and the gift, and it is this very distinction that gives rise to the thoughts mentioned earlier. When we reflect on the compounded nature of the five aggregates and realize that there is no self, we simultaneously understand that all phenomena arise due to causes and conditions, without any permanent substantial existence. From this understanding, we can let go of attachment and clinging to a self that doesn't exist. As a result, when we cultivate virtues such as compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, or the paramitas like generosity, morality, and patience, we will no longer be hindered by self-attachment. Through his own experiences, the Buddha clearly stated in many scriptures that self-attachment is the root of countless mental afflictions. Each of us can personally experience this truth by reflecting on our minds to observe how mental afflictions like greed, anger, jealousy, and envy arise. Without self-attachment as a foundation, these mental states have no ground to arise. Furthermore, even when these mental states have already arisen, if we practice contemplating non-self, we will immediately notice a reduction in their influence over our thoughts, actions, and speech. We will have more choices and autonomy rather than being unconsciously driven by greed, anger, jealousy, and envy. Where do humans come from? The origin of humanity from a religious perspective. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Where do humans come from? Let's take a trip back to our childhood, to those middle school days when we first heard from our literature teacher that humans originated from the legend of Adam and Eve. Almost everyone has heard this story. In summary, God created the first man, Adam, and then created the woman, Eve, to keep Adam company. Then one day, a serpent tempted them to eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. After eating it, they became aware of their nakedness, developed lust, and left the Garden of Eden, eventually giving birth to 3 children. Another version of the story suggests that eating the fruit caused it to get stuck in their throats, leading to the Adam's apple in men. Yes, this is the origin of humanity that many of us have been told since childhood. The versions found in Islamic, Christian, or Jewish scriptures are quite similar. If we look further into the creation theory of Christianity through the book of Genesis, we find that it begins with, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. On the first day God created light, separating it from the darkness, calling the light day, and the darkness night. On the second day, God created the sky and the land and separated the seas. On the third day, God created vegetation and plants. On the fourth day, God created the stars and separated day and night. On the fifth day, God created living creatures in the water and on land, including livestock and wild animals. On the sixth day, God created man in his own image, male and female, and blessed them. Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good." The vast majority of theistic religions around the world have similar explanations, that a god or supernatural being created humans and the universe. For example, in Hinduism, Brahma, the supreme creator, is believed to have created the world. Zoroastrianism speaks of 2 creators, the good spirit and the evil spirit, who created the world and all living beings. Islam, like Christianity, also attributes the creation of all things to God, the supreme creator. The reason why many philosophers attribute the creation of the universe to a supernatural being is simply that they could not explain it otherwise. They were heavily influenced by ancient Christian thought, which attributed anything inexplicable to God. If you pay attention, you'll notice that many Western philosophers during the height of the Roman Empire were given titles like saint or saint, such as Saint Augustine, Saint Thomas, and Saint Paul, indicating their alignment with Christian thought. However, after the decline of Christian power, Western philosophers began to think more freely, though many had to sacrifice their lives because of the rigid dogmatism of Christianity. A typical example is Galileo, who stood before the Inquisition and was condemned for proving the heliocentric theory, that the sun is the center and the earth revolves around it, contrary to the biblical claim that the sun revolves around the earth. Then there was the belief that the earth was flat rather than round. What happened? Eventually, even the Vatican had to acknowledge its mistake and amend the teachings in the Bible. Science advanced beyond biblical teachings, and as it progressed, its findings increasingly contradicted the Bible. One clear example is Darwin's theory of evolution, a groundbreaking theory in 19th century science, suggesting that humans share a common ancestor with apes. For instance, when comparing the thoughts from 2 great civilizations of humanity, with India representing the East through Brahmanic thought, and Europe representing the West through Christianity, both ancient and modern philosophers tried to trace the origins of humankind with explanations full of religious, superstitious, astronomical, scientific, and philosophical elements. Who knows? Maybe someday someone will boldly stand up and prove that humans originated from a different source, such as the cosmic Buddha as described in Buddhist cosmology. Returning to Buddhism, if we had not studied the teachings of the Buddha, many of us might still believe that humans were created by a foreign figure named Adam, as mentioned in the Bible. Or perhaps we would have fallen into the superstitions of Western science. Let's imagine ourselves as scientists or sociologists as we examine the content of the Aganya Sutta, not as Buddhists, but as seekers of knowledge to compare it with the theories humanity currently celebrates. First, the Buddha briefly describes the cycles of the formation and dissolution of the universe in accordance with the law of formation, existence, decay, and destruction. He emphasizes that during the phase of the Earth's decay and destruction, the remaining beings were reborn in the Abhasara Brahma world. At this point, it's important to note that the Abhasara Brahma world is the sixth of the 16 realms in the form realm, which is where beings who have attained the second jhana reside. Thus, during the world's destruction, the virtuous beings inhabit this realm, while the malicious beings are nowhere to be found. The Buddha only briefly summarizes this stage. After the destruction, after a long period, the earth begins to form again as dust and water gather. Initially, the earth was pitch black, submerged in water, and over a long period, beings from the Abhasara Brahma world were reborn on this earth. At that time, they still lived on joy, radiated their own light, and moved through space as they did in the Brahma world. As the earth gradually formed, a certain flavor began to emerge on the water's surface, forming a white froth like the scum of boiled rice, sweet like pure honey. Some beings from the Abhasara Brahma world wanted to taste this flavor, so they dipped their fingers and tasted it, which gave rise to craving and attachment, causing their radiant light to fade away. As their light faded, the sun and moon appeared. When the sun and moon appeared, the stars and constellations emerged. When the stars and constellations appeared, day and night became apparent. When day and night became apparent, months and years emerged. As time passed, they consumed more of this earth's froth. Their bodies became coarser, and their physical forms began to differ. Among them, some were beautiful while others were unattractive. Seeing this, they became arrogant, envious, and judgmental, praising themselves for being beautiful and criticizing others for being unattractive. Due to this arrogance, the frothy earth food disappeared, and they became sad and lamented. Another type of food appeared, white fungus. The next replacement was a type of white earth clump resembling water spinach stems, followed by rice that grew in clusters without husks or bran. As beings developed unwholesome thoughts of greed and arrogance about the food and their physical forms, the previous food disappeared and was replaced by food of lower quality. Along with the description of the earth's formation, the Buddha shows the progression of the being's consciousness and morality, which gradually degraded. First, there was arrogance, with beings praising themselves and criticizing others based on physical beauty and skin color. After consuming wheat for some time, gender differences appeared, and attraction between males and females arose. When they engaged in sexual relations, they were scorned and ridiculed by others, forcing them to hide, build houses to conceal their activities, and thus family life emerged. Some lazy beings began hoarding wheat for several days to avoid searching for food daily, leading to the division of land for harvesting. This was the beginning of private property. Then, theft began as lazy beings stole wheat from others. People began appointing leaders to deal with theft, resolve disputes, and punish wrongdoers, compensating the leaders with portions of the wheat harvest. This was how the ruling class and government systems emerged, and society continued to shape its class systems, species, and identities. Some beings, frightened by these immoral behaviors, retreated into the forest to practice meditation. Those unable to meditate wrote scriptures. These individuals were called Brahmin hermits. Most people who enjoyed sexual activities lived separately in houses and engaged in commerce and trade. These people were called laborers and merchants. The rest, who had evil hearts and engaged in harmful activities, were called slaves. Finally, the Buddha clarified the standards of morality, human rights, and equality, without distinctions of race or skin color, and emphasized that these standards should be based on the practice of the true Dharma, purifying body and mind, rather than on class or skin color. He taught that regardless of whether one is a king, a monk, a commoner, or a slave, if they commit evil, they are equally bad, and if they do good, they equally enjoy the fruits of peace. But due to ignorance, greed, and arrogance, beings develop discrimination, create differences, and harm and oppress one another, leading to the decline of moral standards in both individuals and society. Through the brief content of the Aganya Sutta above, we see that the description of the destruction and formation of the earth or the universe in Buddhism is not attributed to any god or deity, but is a long process that takes place over time. When compared to the Big Bang theory of modern science, it closely resembles the stages of disintegration into dust, the presence of water, the accumulation of matter, the emergence of darkness and light, the rising and falling of the Earth's surface, and the formation of food cells from water. In terms of the social and political life system, this is clearly illustrated through the moral and behavioral changes of beings. When compared to Darwin's theory of evolution, which states that life is a process of natural selection, the origin of humanity in this sutta aligns very well. They gradually adapted to different types of food to survive and evolved. Darwin's idea that humans share a common ancestor with apes does not mean that humans originated from apes and vice versa. Beings grow and develop through their own natural selection process. When comparing the Buddhist worldview on the origin of humanity with that of other religions worldwide, the difference is clear. It's as different as night and day, as demonstrated by the examples above. Some religious teachings have had to be revised to align with scientific findings, while Buddhist teachings are still being explored and confirmed by science. The more science delves into these teachings, the more it verifies the accuracy of the Buddha's words. More than 2 centuries ago, the great scientist Einstein affirmed that the religion of the future will be a cosmic religion. It should transcend a personal God and avoid dogmas and theology. Covering both the natural and the spiritual, it should be based on a religious sense arising from the experience of all things, natural and spiritual, as a meaningful unity. Buddhism answers this description. This shows the simplicity and the profound truth of the Buddha's teachings. Buddhism is a non-theistic religion. Compared to theistic religions, Buddhism is a rare species in need of protection, if not a minority. This emphasizes how rare it is to find a religion that promotes self-power beyond the dominion of a god, or a religious leader with such deep and truthful insight that modern science has yet to fully grasp. It is rare to find an educator or sociologist who can clearly explain the system of human social ethics from its origin to the present as the Buddha did. He could answer simply and realistically that humans are born from their mother's womb, and he could also explain the origin of humans in a way that is both supernatural and non-theistic, both beyond conceptual thought and practically exemplified in life without the need for a telescope or archaeological tool. However, being the master of all doctrines, the Buddha summarized everything into one truth so that the listener could experience the reality, let go of delusion, arrogance, and craving. Just as Einstein's idea of a unified whole is to understand oneself fully by observing the universe. At that point, the question of where humans come from, whether from this planet or another, becomes irrelevant. What matters is the present moment, how our thoughts and actions impact the world around us. We will face, feel, and respond to nature as it is. And that, dear audience, is the content for today. May you and your family always be safe and happy.
Increasing natural disasters. The overwhelming karma of humanity. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. Are natural disasters such as earthquakes and tsunamis caused by the negative effects of killing living beings? If humans want to be free from suffering, they need to cultivate mindfulness, avoid evil deeds, do good deeds, and help all living beings. This is the solemn teaching of the Buddhas across the eons. Enlightening the world. Humanity will follow the karma they have created and will experience either good or bad results, depending on their deeds, leading to the end of suffering. In recent years, hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, and tsunamis have occurred everywhere with increasing intensity, threatening the lives of many people and animals. It seems that each year's storms are stronger than the previous year, and the damage to human life and property is incalculable. According to scientists, this is all due to global warming, which causes ice to melt, deforestation, and excessive use of substances that increase greenhouse gases. However, many believe that all of this is a consequence of the killing of sentient beings. The unrest in the world is due to the unresolved debts of countless spirits who died unjustly, leading to wars, while earthquakes and tsunamis are believed to be the karmic result of abortions, with the souls of unborn children unable to move on, causing these disasters. Is this perspective in line with the teachings of Buddhism? How can we reduce such damages? In the geological history of our Earth, climate change has occurred many times, with long periods of cold and heat, which we refer to as ice ages or interglacial periods. The last ice age occurred 10,000 years ago, and we are currently in a warming phase of the interglacial period. The causes of these climate changes can be attributed to the shifts and tilts of the Earth's rotational axis, changes in its orbital path around the Sun, the positioning of the continents and oceans, and especially changes in atmospheric composition. While the first causes are planetary, the final cause is significantly impacted by humans, which we refer to as global warming or the greenhouse effect. Climate change is becoming increasingly severe, with the clearest manifestation being the warming of the Earth, ice melting, rising sea levels, and unusual weather events such as storms, tsunamis, earthquakes, droughts, and prolonged cold spells, leading to food shortages and the spread of various diseases among humans, livestock, and poultry. The effects of global warming can be seen in the following 10 negative outcomes: rising sea levels, the retreat of glaciers to the poles, heat waves, storms and floods, droughts, natural disasters, economic downturns, conflicts and wars, loss of biodiversity, and the destruction of ecosystems. These are scientific observations. However, according to Buddhism, the state of our environment is part of the declining eon. The phenomena of the declining eon occurring in the 21st century are harming humanity, but it is none other than humans themselves who are creating bad karma. In the declining eon, human lifespan is determined by the good karma accumulated in the advancing eon. In the beginning, humans had a lifespan of up to 84,000 years. Every 100 years, the lifespan decreases by 1 year until it reaches the lowest point of 10 years, marking the end of the human era. This entire cycle is considered one declining eon, which spans approximately 899,000 years. When the human lifespan was 84,000 years, people stood 840 feet tall, and with every 100 years their height decreased by 1 foot, as did their lifespan. When humans reach the age of 10, they will only be 1 foot tall. In the declining eon, the bad karma of humanity increases, and their blessings diminish. When the lifespan was 84,000 years, due to the rise in good karma, the 7 treasures appeared, favorable weather prevailed, and the land was abundant with sweet springs and fragrant rice. People were virtuous, and a wise king governed the land. However, when the lifespan decreases to just 10 years, due to the increase in bad karma, the 7 treasures disappear, food loses its taste, and disasters occur. The environment turns harsh, with spirits and demons crying out, the balance of yin and yang disrupted, and rain falling out of season. Hunger and suffering spread, and humans deceive, compete, and kill each other. In this declining eon, there are also 3 minor calamities: famine, epidemics, and war. According to the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, when the human lifespan decreases to only 30 years, there will be a catastrophe of famine lasting for 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days. During this time, rain will be rare, and no crops will grow, leading to countless human deaths, with bones scattered across the fields. If anyone manages to find a single grain of rice, they will treat it as if it were a precious jewel and hide it away carefully. After this horrific wave of death, the survivors will become disillusioned, and those of lower status will truly repent, which will bring an end to the disaster. When the human lifespan decreases to 20 years, due to people's growing dissatisfaction and regret for their past misdeeds, they will begin to commit further evil, leading to an epidemic lasting 7 months and 7 days. The dead will be left unburied, scattered along roads and in fields. At that time, people will realize that their suffering is the result of their bad karma, and they will sincerely repent. This collective remorse will lead to the end of the epidemic. As time passes, humanity will gradually forget the suffering they experienced and will once again engage in the 10 evil deeds, bringing even more suffering upon themselves. When the human lifespan decreases to only 10 years, children will be able to walk shortly after birth, and within just a few years, they will marry. At that time, humanity will consider husked rice as their most precious food, use hair as their finest clothing, and adorn themselves with iron. All the delicious and valuable foods will disappear, and things like honey, sugar, and salt will lose their taste. During great banquets, people will often cook dry bones to serve each other. At that point, there will be another catastrophe of war. First, nations will bring armies to kill one another, and even within families, between fathers and sons, brothers and husbands and wives, there will be constant arguments, let alone with outsiders. As the world nears its end, the power of bad karma will reach its peak. In just 7 days, humanity will become mad, and whatever they hold in their hands, be it a stick, tile, or stone, will turn into swords and weapons. No matter if people are family or strangers, they will kill one another on sight, thinking that if they do not kill, they themselves will be killed. During that time, death will be widespread and the roads will be deserted. After 7 days, the killing karma will dissipate, and only around 10,000 people will survive, hiding in caves and mountains. Gradually, they will emerge, but the world will be desolate, and it will be difficult to encounter another human even after traveling many miles. When they do meet, they will embrace and weep. At this point, the declining eon will have reached its final stage. Humanity, filled with profound disillusionment, will gradually begin to practice good deeds, and as a result, their blessings and lifespan will slowly increase once again. Indeed, such natural phenomena frequently occur as a result of the karmic retribution of sentient beings on Earth. People, in their desire to enjoy the fruits of their labor, compete for power, expand their dominance, and pay little attention to ethical living or spiritual practice. As a result, greed, anger, and ignorance erupt with increasing intensity, fueling personal selfishness. To satisfy their desires for food, clothing, comfort, fame, and material wealth, they create enmity and kill one another, leading to the tragic outcomes of ethnic wars, border wars, and even global wars, all of which are horrifying and result in the merciless killing of humans. This is the karmic cause and effect. Another heart-wrenching consequence is the karma of killing animals. Wild creatures like tigers, leopards, elephants, and livestock such as cattle, sheep, goats, chickens, and ducks, as well as marine life, all of whom suffer because of humans. In essence, humans accumulate resentment and engage in the endless cycle of birth and death, repayment and retribution. If people wish to end their suffering, they must cultivate mindfulness, avoid evil deeds, do good, and help all sentient beings. This is the solemn teaching of the Buddhas throughout the ages. People will follow the karma they have created and will no longer experience suffering. For example, if we do not cut down forests, there will be no floods or droughts. If we do not kill or steal, and do not exploit the weak, there will be no wars, pain, or separation. If we are not greedy, selfish, and obsessed with the 5 sensual pleasures, there will be no global warming, melting ice, earthquakes, or tsunamis. If we avoid indulgence in luxury, gambling, and intoxication, there will be no poverty or hunger. Bhikkhus, when humans become unrighteous, this is the 5th hindrance to rainfall. Bhikkhus, this is a hindrance to rainfall that forecasters cannot predict, for their eyes cannot endure or comprehend the causes. Rain is a natural and essential phenomenon for human life. However, heavy rain can cause natural disasters such as floods, which wash away wealth, destroy land, submerge homes, and claim human lives. In recent years, floods have been continuous across the world, especially in central Vietnam, where natural disasters have become more frequent, making life increasingly difficult for people. Humanity is powerless before the destruction caused by nature, despite increasingly accurate weather forecasts that help people protect themselves and their belongings. After each flood, the people in affected areas still endure immense suffering and loss. According to the Buddha, we must use and exploit natural resources responsibly, without depleting them, and we must protect the environment as we would protect our own hearts. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha teaches that there are 5 hindrances caused by rain and 5 obstacles to rain. Bhikkhus, these are hindrances to rainfall that forecasters cannot predict, as their eyes cannot endure them. What are these 5? In the sky, Bhikkhus, the element of fire is in turmoil, and thus the clouds scatter. Bhikkhus, this is the first hindrance to rain, and forecasters do not know it, for their eyes cannot endure or comprehend it. Again, Bhikkhus, in the sky, the wind element is in turmoil, and thus the clouds scatter. Bhikkhus, this is the second hindrance to rain, and forecasters do not know it, for their eyes cannot endure or comprehend it. Again, Bhikkhus, Rahu, the king of the Asuras, grasps the water with his hand and pours it into the great ocean. Bhikkhus, this is the third hindrance to rain, and forecasters do not know it, for their eyes cannot endure or comprehend it. Again, Bhikkhus, the deities of the clouds become lazy and neglect to cause rain. This is the fourth hindrance to rain, and forecasters do not know it, for their eyes cannot endure or comprehend it. Again, bhikkhus, when people become unrighteous, this is the fifth hindrance to rain. Forecasters do not know it, for their eyes cannot endure or comprehend it. Bhikkhus, these are the 5 hindrances to rain that forecasters do not know, for their eyes cannot endure or comprehend them. Among these 5 hindrances, one is the result of unrighteous human behavior. Unrighteous people are those filled with greed. They exploit nature excessively, deforest lands, cultivate the soil, block water flows, and release harmful gases into the environment. These are the direct causes of natural disasters and floods. The Buddha teaches that this highlights the deep connection between humans and nature. According to the doctrine of dependent origination, humans and nature are inseparable and are part of a unified, indivisible whole. Economist E.F. Schumacher said that humans are children of nature, not its masters. We must understand that we are part of an ecosystem that includes many different forms of life. When humans are greedy or exploit nature excessively for profit, they will face adverse consequences. Climate change and environmental pollution are the results of human actions. Therefore, according to the Buddha, we must use and exploit nature responsibly and should not deplete it. Instead, we should protect the environment as we would protect our own hearts. Now, more than ever, we must take immediate action to save the natural environment. For saving the environment is saving ourselves. We must start with the smallest actions possible to bring purity and peace to the natural environment, ensuring favorable weather, calm seas, and creating a peaceful and happy life for all beings.